This is a special update as we get into the breaking news for Hurricane Sally, now a Category 2 hurricane as of the 5 p.m. advisory. Believe it or not, it has rapidly intensified from a tropical storm this morning to a Category 2 hurricane this afternoon, from 65 to 100 miles per hour. Here's a wide look at the Atlantic. Hurricane Paulette continues as 105 miles per hour. We did have the dissipation of Renee, and Teddy is now up to 65 miles per hour, I believe, as well as never mind. Teddy is at 50 miles per hour. That's my bad. As well as Tropical Storm Vicky at 45 miles per hour. So quite a lot happening. But today we're going to be focusing on Sally, of course, as all of these other systems are no threat to land at the moment, at least. And if you're concerned about Teddy, Teddy is expected to go towards Bermuda again. So no concern on that one either. All right, so current latest on Sally here. As you can see, now up to 100 miles per hour, 987 millibars, moving at 6 miles per hour, so continuing to slow down. Life-threatening storm surge, hurricane force winds, and flash flooding likely along portion of the northern Gulf Coast starting tonight and Tuesday. So really a horrible situation for the eastern Louisiana, as this could continue to rapidly intensify into what could be a Category 3 and possible a Cat 4, but right now Category 3. And really, Louisiana already had to deal with Cristobal. It already had to deal with Laura, a powerful Category 4 hurricane, almost a Category 5. And now it's going to have to deal with potentially a Cat 3 to Category 4 hurricane. Again, we just don't want that to happen right now. But unfortunately, it just blew up this morning. It just completely blew up. And when Recon went in there, found out it had winds of 90 miles per hour. So they actually went from 65 to 85 to 90 to 100 miles per hour. So really a strengthening system as we speak. Here's that IR loop, losing a little bit of convection. It is having a tiny bit of trouble there. And I'm going to be showing you guys what's happening with it. We're actually getting a little bit of a dry air intrusion here, which hopefully could, you can see here at the beginning, it had this ginormous area of convection, but now we're getting actually a little bit of a dry air intrusion inside that center. As you can see right here, you can see that potentially that dry air, it could be dry air potentially. Here, we're going to pause it at the end of that thing. You can see the dry air possibly getting a little bit sucked in from that center. But either way, the center right now is around here at the moment. And with what's happening currently is that we're having a big blowout of convection in the north, which is the most northern side, which is where they found those Cat 2 winds. But what's happening is that we're getting convection in south and northern side. So what we really need to do is just wrap around more. And then we could be getting that eye starting to clear, but no eye at all yet. No eye feature noted. Now you can see those blacks really getting into the Florida Panhandle. And if we go back to this morning, look to earlier today, this is just how much convection we had. And this is what I'm saying. It is looking a little bit less good, I guess you could say, but it's actually organizing. But we have, this is that big blow up of convection that pushed it to hurricane status. And as we get into the day, that blow up of convection continued until, as you can see there, we start to get that kind of split in convection, which I do strongly believe is possibly a dry intrusion, but we'll look at that later on to see if it's actually a dry intrusion. And then that convection did slow down quite significantly, but still a very healthy storm. We're getting this convection stretching all the way into Georgia anyways, and we're getting this new blow up of convection, which could potentially push it to those Cat 3 status. But either way, here's that low pressure center. It's been moving like this in this general direction for the past few days. We actually got the center relocation at some point. I believe it was like right here, and then it relocated over here, and now it's over there. So it did something like that, and when it moved, it actually kind of did this, right? It did this, then went like this, and then went like that. So it kind of keeps relocating to the east a little bit, especially to this morning when Recon found that the center had relocated to the northeast of its current center, which actually pushed it a little bit closer to the Florida Panhandle and the Mississippi-Alabama coast. Unfortunately, where there's those tropical storm warnings currently still in effect. Just a lot of bad news, because as of this morning, we only expected a 75 to 80 mile per hour landfall, and this system, we're looking now at a monster 100 mile per hour landfall, which still has more than 24 hours to go, because believe it or not, it is no longer expected to go like this, which was the bad news, but actually the good news. It's now expected to go like this. And what's going to happen with that, it's going to be continuing to trend for the next 24 hours. But then for another good 10 hours or so, it's going to be in this little this little area here, the center, for another good 10 hours or so. It's going to be right here, just kind of meandering here as it slowly moves north. And what's going to cause for that model to actually show it rapidly intensifying to a 3 or Cat 4 in this little area here, which could be obviously devastating for flooding. And it is only moving at 6 miles per hour. But anyways, here's a look at the current cone, because I don't want to make the video too long, of course. Right now, we haven't had a cone update yet, although we might have one. So I'm going to reload that really quick. So now we don't have any cone update, still expected to make a Category 2 landfall. But keep in mind, at the last cone update, it was expected to make a 105 mile per hour landfall. So now that we have on our hand a system that's already has winds of 105 mile per hour, the question is will it be able to strengthen further to potentially a Category 3 hurricane? Now, currently, it's not expected. Currently, in the latest National Hurricane Center code, they expect a 105 mile per hour landfall, but actually strengthening to 110. So that H right here is 105 mile per hour, but those two H's here are 110. And this is what I've been talking about. First of all, it has a fairly big wind field, of course, but it's going to be staying in that little area here for a little while before kind of turning back. So this is just a very, very concerning situation. And it could turn very soon. It could go as south as this and as north as all the way over there. So still a potential area of impact from the easternmost Louisiana to the westernmost Alabama area. So just a little frame, but either way, anywhere from the Florida Panhandle to easternmost Louisiana is going to be getting the effects. Okay, so potential rainfall thankfully has gone down. We were at one point above 20 inches, potentially up to 25 inches of rainfall, and National Hurricane Center now has put that down to 15 inches, between 15 and 20 inches, thankfully, where we were previously looking at a catastrophic 20 inches. Now, don't keep in mind 50 inches. That is more than 1 feet of rain, guys. That is more than 2 feet of rain, okay? That is almost 3 feet, if not 3 feet of rain. So that could very well flood your house. So take this by precaution. But here's that current track and like based on this thing, so you can see where that rainfall is going to be. The worst part of the system is going to be on the eastern side, and then potentially kind of moving on the western side of the storm. But either way, you're going to be getting a lot of rainfall, again, from easternmost Louisiana, but now really mostly in the Mississippi, Alabama. So we went from a very big Louisiana threat to a Mississippi, Alabama threat, because yes, Louisiana is going to be getting very close to the center, but the saying is the worst of the system is on the east and the northern side. So hopefully Louisiana should get away with a major hurricane landfall. All right, so here's a look at also that flash flooding potential, and we are at a high flash flooding potential again for the Mississippi and Alabama border. Alrighty, and lastly, here's that peak surge potential. We haven't gone up any, still at 7 to 11 feet, but National Hurricane Center did call this life-threatening storm surge. Now, if you remember for Laura, they said unsurvivable storm surge. We're not at that point yet, but we are at 7 to 11 feet of storm surge in the mouth of the Mississippi River. And keep in mind, this Hurricane Laura, or my bad, Hurricane Sally is going to go a little bit like this. So it is going to be bringing, as it turns, it has, of course, clockwise winds. So when the center is right here, the winds are going to be going like this, all right? So that means that when the center is to the north, when it's in this area, we're going to be getting winds pushing the water in. But when it's around right here, we're going to be getting winds kind of pushing it north and then south. So really what we're going to be getting is the most impacts from storm surge are when those storms are going to be to the north of Louisiana, and those winds are going to be getting pushed in. On the opposite, though, the worst impacts for this area is when the storm is going to be to the south of it, and those very strong winds are going to be pushing that water in. All right, so here's kind of a look at the current track the storm took, just kind of for like a reminder of what happened. I guess it's kind of interesting. It actually went, believe it or not, it actually crossed Florida as a form of tropical depression, became a tropical storm right around here, right? So it actually crossed Florida here and then actually moved kind of north, as you can see, and now it's starting to take that curve. Now, I'm not too sure why we don't have tropical storm warnings right here. That is not something I know why at the moment. because we do have tropical storm warnings right here, so I'm not sure why they just wouldn't connect it to the hurricane warnings. But either way, we do have hurricanes warnings that far away from the center. Now, if we look at the cone again, it's expected to go like this. So really not sure why we don't have tropical storm warnings here, and we have hurricane warnings that far into the Louisiana area, but we don't even have hurricane warnings this far to the right. So right now the warnings don't make a lot of sense to me, but at the new cone update, sorry, they'll probably change it. All right, so here are the spaghetti models. Again, not updated yet. They're still in the old center, I believe, but still an Alabama landfall. Now, the National Hurricane Center cone, as you know, they don't shift it that much. So let's say the models yesterday and I were here, they're only going to shift it up to here. And that's exactly what happened. The National Hurricane Center didn't shift it too much because they just don't do that. They slowly shift it. So they shifted it from here to here. So they're actually on the easternmost side of the consensus because they actually make the storm go like this. So they're on the easternmost side, and believe it or not, all the models pretty much think it's gonna go straight north. And it's actually even worse scenario because in 24 hours it'll still be here, and it actually make landfall in about 36 hours, which again is gonna have even more water to stay in for next more than 24 hours. All right, so once again, I'm just showing you guys those models, but they're not updated. They still think it's a 90 mile per hour storm. Of course, we do now know that it's actually more than 90 knots. It's actually at 105 mile per hour, which actually puts it all the way up there, believe it or not. So very, very concerning. Very concerning. What is the knot for the system? I'm going to tell you guys right now. It is at 90 knot. So, yep, 90 knot. So let me go back to where I was. So it's actually close to Category 3 status, which is really, really bad. Really, really bad. When it gets to 90, I think it's when it gets to like 95 knots or 100, when it gets to like 95 or 100 knots, it'll be a Category 3. So now that this shifted up there, I'm sure the model would shift to Cat 3 status. I'm sure pretty much all of those models you see going to Cat 2, they're all going to show potentially strong Cat 2 to Cat 3. So very, very concerning. Okay, so here's that latest recon flight that just happened. And I kind of just want to show you guys what recon's been finding. And you can see there that center 990 millibars. So actually, it kind of weakened slightly from 987 to 990. But usually that's not the actual pressure because they have to take into account how high it is, blah, blah, blah. But either way, they did find those very strong wind now on that southeast eye wall, which was one of the weakest part of the eye wall. So it's getting a structure better. Not really strong winds on that southern western eye wall, but we do have extremely strong winds on that very, very far northeast quadrant, which could potentially say that we may have eye wall replacement cycle. And when that happens, that we have that primary eye wall, but then we have kind of like a second eye wall building. And so when that happens, that kind of second eye wall does start to actually come closer and actually replace the old eye wall, which could be a possibility. And when that happens, we actually see the storm potentially remain the same strength or weaken. And so depending on how much time that takes, we could actually very potentially, unlikely at the moment, it might just be an area with strong gusts, but when that happens, we can actually see the storm weaken slightly and then strengthen again. But then again, since it's going to be making landfall in 24 to 36 hours, it always matters, is it going to have time to do that? And at the moment, probably, but just keep in mind, it's still a hurricane, and probably, this is just a supposition. I think it's just an area with like strong wind gusts, and at the moment, nothing to worry about in terms of our replacement cycle. Now, once again here, you can see that potential dryer kind of intruding in, or it's just that but it really does look dry, but we'll look at that after. Alrighty, so now quickly, I just want to show you guys the wind shear. And as you can see here, it is starting to get into those unfavorable wind shear. The center's right here. And so this is going to be starting to affect the system as it gets into a very unfavorable wind shear, which is going to push it towards the east. And so what's going to happen is that we have, let me just go back here. What's going to happen with this is that the problem is we have winds pushing it to the west on the bottom, on the low level, and winds pushing it to the east on the upper level. So the strongest it goes, the more east it's going to turn because the more higher up in the atmosphere it's going to move. But what we don't hope kind of is that if those two kind of cancel out, it's just going to remain. It's not going to affect it. Now, let's say the southern winds become stronger or the low level westerly winds become stronger, then that's going to cause wind shear on the system, and the thunderstorm activity is going to kind of start collapsing, and then the low level center not going to be allowing the upper level center. Same thing if the easterly winds are stronger, that's going to be causing wind shear and possibly weakening the system. But if the two of them cancel out, then on the other hand, we have a system that's not really getting affected by wind shear. Okay, so very quickly, just looking at that dry air potential that I was talking about, maybe kind of intruding into the center of the system. This is what we're quickly gonna take a look at before ending this video for you guys today, because I do want to bring you guys on all the latest information that we want to know what's going on with all that latest information. Of course, by the way, you can see that radar there for the system. Really, you can see that eye. So here's the dust map, and this is just very quickly to show us if that's possibly an intrusion of dry air. Like I said, might be, but then again, I could be wrong. So it doesn't really look like it at the moment, because you can see here there's some dry air, so maybe that's what kind of got in, but there's just a possibility it's just kind of trying to reform its organization, and that's why it's doing so. So I don't think it's too much at the moment. Okay, so we're not going to be looking at the models because, of course, we know what's going to happen. The models better to look when we have a far-longing storm. But you can see here both hurricanes, and really Sally is just becoming better and